Hi everyone, thanks for being here today. We'll be talking about organic food and its nutrition content compared to conventionally grown food. I'm not an economics or environmental major, so I only can speak on the nutrition impact of different farming practices, but it's important to analyze farming practices through a multifaceted lens, accounting for effects on food availability, cost, safety, nutritional value, economy, and the environment. And remember, what's best for you and your family might not be the best option for someone else. It's difficult to compare conventional and organic food due to a lack of data. Research methods are inconsistent and farming methods vary among studies. For example, one organic farm may use natural pesticides while another might not. Not all conventional farms use the same techniques either. In observational studies, socioeconomic status is a huge confounding variable. People who buy organic foods are more often wealthier and more educated, and as we know, people of a higher socioeconomic status are more likely to have better health outcomes anyways. So when analyzing observational studies, it's difficult to say whether their improved health is due to socioeconomic status or eating organic food. While I try to be as neutral as possible, we all have inherent bias. My first job was at a dairy called Rosa Brothers Milk Company. In college, I interned with the Dairy Council, and I grew up in the Central Valley of California, where a large portion of the U.S. food is produced. That's actually the view outside my childhood home, courtesy of Google Maps. In the past, I've been an advocate for conventional farming practices because prior research has shown conventionally grown produce is generally safe and makes healthy eating more accessible for lower income populations. However, I can't deny that large use of pesticides may be harmful to our environment and people who live in these farming communities. And we can't have a healthy people without healthy environment. In order to be certified organic, a farm must comply with the USDA organic regulations. Farmers pay additional costs for the certification, so that may be a barrier for some farmers. For a crop to be certified organic, the land cannot be treated with synthetic pesticides, fertilizers, or herbicides 3 years prior to certification. Pesticides, herbicides, or fertilizers must be from natural origin. They cannot use genetic engineering or sewage sludge, and they must use organic seed when available. For the livestock to be organic, it must be fed 100% organic feed, and no growth hormones or antibiotics are allowed. If the animal does get sick and needs antibiotics, it can no longer be used. The farm cannot withhold antibiotics from a sick animal just to maintain organic certification. GMOs are plants, animals, or microorganisms whose genetic material has been altered through a process called genetic engineering. This is different than natural breeding methods. Remember, a crop cannot be organic if it has been genetically modified. The FDA, EPA, and USDA monitor safety of GMOs. Most organic crops are used in animal feeds or packaged foods such as high fructose corn syrup. So the yellow sweet corn you get in the produce section in the store is not genetically modified, but the corn in your highly processed foods may be. The food policies and health of the US are often compared to the EU, so I'll talk a little bit about this during this presentation. In the US, most countries ban production of GMO crops mainly for political reasons, but they are still one of the largest importers. So just because they aren't making GMOs doesn't mean they aren't consuming them. However, the European Academy of Science and European Food Safety Authority and European Safety Authority confirmed safety of biotech crops. GMO crops available worldwide include alfalfa, Arctic apples, canola, corn, cotton, eggplant, papaya, pink pineapple, potatoes, gal-safe pork, aqua advantage salmon, soybean, squash, sugar beet, and sugarcane. One pro of GMOs is that they may be pest resistant like GMO corn, which can reduce the need for pesticides. Some GMO crops are more nutritious. For example, the pink pineapple has increased lycopene, and the innate potato has reduced asparagine, which is a naturally occurring amino acid that when cooked at high temperatures can produce a carcinogen. This is also why you should avoid frying foods. The gal-safe pig is a type of pork that is safe for those with alpha-gal allergies, and GMOs can reduce food waste. The innate potatoes and Arctic apples are more resistant to browning, so consumers are less likely to throw them away. More GMO crops are in development, including a gluten-free bread or a gluten-free wheat and a lower asparagine wheat. A main concern of GMOs is that some GMO crops, such as sugar beet, canola, and alfalfa, are more resistant to herbicides and therefore more pesticides can be used. Environmentalists are also concerned about reduced biodiversity, cross-contamination, and pesticide-resistant pests. The nutrition of organic produce varies by study and by crop. One study by Baranski showed a 20 to 40% higher antioxidant and polyphenol content of organic food. And that same study showed that conventional crops had higher protein, nitrogen, nitrate, and nitrate content. But other studies have shown there's not a significant nutrient difference between conventional or organic foods. One study showed that fertilizers use may impact nutrition. For example, a potassium fertilizer decreases iron and magnesium in the crop, while a nitrogen fertilizer increases beta carotene and decreases vitamin C in crops. One study showed that organic wheat flour was lower in calcium, manganese, iron, and protein, and higher in potassium and zinc. Organic wheat flour may be better digested, but that may also be due to the wheat variety rather than the farming methods. Multiple studies have shown that organic wheat flour is lower in arsenic and cadmium, but conventionally grown wheat was still well below the tolerable limit in arsenic and cadmium. Multiple studies have shown that grass-fed meat, poultry, and dairy are higher in omega-3s and lower in saturated fat. This is likely due to eating fresh forage rather than simply eating organic feed. One study in 2008 showed children who drank organic milk had lower levels of eczema, but this may have been due to the higher amounts of omega-3 in their diet. One study showed that organic milk was lower in iodine. All meat and milk is tested for antibiotics and cannot have detectable levels of antibiotics when sold. Animals who are receiving antibiotics are separated during treatment, and farmers do not like to use antibiotics unnecessarily because it's more expensive to do so. There are concerns about increased antibiotic-resistant bacteria from conventionally grown foods. A study by Smith-Spangler showed that antibiotic-resistant bacteria was less prevalent in organically raised poultry and swine. Additional growth hormones are prohibited in poultry and pork. Some hormones are approved for use in cattle and sheep. RBST is approved, but not used due to consumer demand. You probably have seen no RSBT use on every milk jug you've bought. BST is not biologically active in humans. There's no evidence that growth hormones in cattle have a significant impact on human health, but cows treated with growth hormones may have increased risk of infection, which raises concerns of antibiotic resistance. I think this table is so interesting. It's comparing estrogenic activity in beef where growth hormones were used compared to other foods such as beans or tofu. And as you can see, plants have much higher levels of estrogenic activity than meat or milk with growth hormones. There's large concern about pesticide use and increased risk of cancer. Small women and children are at a higher risk for cancer from pesticides due to their lower body weight. While there are many other pesticides other than glyphosate, I'll be talking about that one because it is the pesticide most talked about in the media. The WHO listed glyphosate as a group 2A carcinogen, which means it's probably carcinogenic to humans. This is based on limited evidence of cancer in humans, but sufficient evidence of cancer in experimental animals. However, the FAO, ECHA, and EFSA affirmed glyphosate status as a non-carcinogenic pesticide. Multiple studies have found a possible link between glyphosate and increased incidence of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. This study looked at those exposed to high levels of glyphosate, like those who live in farming communities. In case you're wondering, I have Hodgkin's lymphoma, not non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. In Spain, one study showed increased risk of cancer in regions with a higher level of pesticide exposure. More research does need to be done on pesticides. One study showed that pesticide formulas are more toxic to human cells than declared active ingredients alone, and most research on pesticides solely examines the effect of a pesticide active principle and may not reflect relevant environmental exposure and the consequences of being exposed to multiple pesticides over one's lifetime. Other things to consider: organic farming generally improves soil health of the farm and may be more resilient against droughts and floods. It's difficult to say whether yields are better with conventional or organic farming methods because yields vary by crop, climate, and farm management. Most studies show negative health impacts of pesticides exposure. We're looking at farmers and those living near farms because they are exposed to much higher levels. This is an interesting infographic comparing organic and conventional foods and their impact on the environment. The Dirty Dozen is a list created by the Environmental Working Group. Every year it lists 12 foods to buy organic. It's based on the USDA Pesticides Data Program, an annual summary. You can use the link or go to the USDA PDP website to check different commodities and pesticides used on that commodity. In the 2023 PDP annual summary, almost 10,000 samples were tested, and 99% of those samples had pesticide residue below the tolerance established by the EPA, and 38% had no detectable residue. 48 samples had pesticide levels that exceeded tolerance. Of these 48 samples, 39 of them were imported, so eating locally may reduce your pesticide exposure. The foods that exceed tolerance include 18 tomatillo samples, 13 blackberries, 9 grapes, 4 tomatoes, 3 celery, and 1 baby food peaches. I think the Environmental Working Group is a useful tool, but it does sometimes misrepresent the data. You can reduce pesticide residue by washing all produce, even those with peels. Peeling the skin can reduce pesticide residue, but it will also reduce your fiber intake. You can cut the tops and outer portion of celery, lettuce, cabbage, and other leafy vegetables, but do not wash with soap, detergent, or commercial products. You can use baking soda and vinegar, but it will likely alter taste and texture, and there's some debate on whether or not it's effective. Fun fact, this is actually a question that's on the RD exam, but restaurants will add baking soda to lettuce sometimes to make lettuce more green and look more appealing on the salad bar, but it makes it wilt faster and leads to a softer texture. A study comparing washing methods on leafy greens showed running water and boiling were most effective for reducing pesticide residue. If you're interested in reducing your glyphosate intake, look for the organic seal or the Detox Project glyphosate residue-free certification. The Environmental Working Group is a great resource for brands that don't use pesticides as well. Kellogg's, Kind, and Clif Bar are brands that are not certified organic, but have pledged to not use glyphosate on their products. Organic food can be expensive. Ways to reduce cost include eating in season, buying the store brand version of that organic food, and buy locally. Costco has a lot of affordable organic options. I mostly shop at Costco and was really surprised by how many things in my fridge were already organic. Remember that Americans are still not eating enough fruits and vegetables, and multiple studies have shown that fruits and vegetables, even if conventionally grown, are beneficial for our bodies. Conventional foods are generally safe for consumption, so if you have to choose between organic foods or none, I would always choose eating more fruits and vegetables. To reduce pesticide exposure, vary your diet and wash your food. If you do have the means to eat organic food, it can have a beneficial impact on the environment and those in farming communities by reducing antibiotic resistance and pesticide use. And here are my sources. Thanks, guys.